Good afternoon. This meeting will come to order. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. My name is Mary Jiang, President of the Oakland Rotary Club, made up of nearly 270 people. The Rotary Club of Oakland is the third oldest club in the Rotary world and made up of as one of Rotary's most diverse clubs. Our commitment to service above self is carried out throughout our service project, both locally and internationally. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our 5,438th meeting, who's counting, to the California Ballroom and online. For over 114 years, we have welcomed Rotarians and guests to our club meeting. For those attending online, if you're a visiting Rotarian or a guest of a Rotarian, please enter your name in the chat box located in the center at the bottom of the screen so that we can recognize you in a few minutes. If you have comments or want to ask a question of the speaker, please put it in the chat box. We recommend you view today's meeting using speaker view located at the upper right-hand corner of the screen. And if there's some visiting Rotarian, Ed Gentleman is not able to introduce any visiting Rotarian, so if Peter sees a visiting Rotarian, maybe he can chime in and let us know. All right, traditionally, we do the Pledge of Allegiance on the following federal holidays: Memorial Day, Veteran Day, and President's Day. Since Memorial Day is on May 29th, I would like to ask Rotarian Carrie Bukovic to do the pledge, followed by a thought for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, President Mary, and welcome fellow Rotarians. Here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. So here we are with our thought for the day. So my daughter turns a year old next week, and she's got 3 new teeth coming in, so the last couple of nights at my house have been a lot of screaming and crying in the wee small hours of the morning. And that brings me to my thought of the day, because what I sing to her is a different version that I'd like to share with you that goes like this. In the wee small hours of the morning, when the whole wide world is fast asleep, I lie awake, comforting my child, and never ever think of counting sheep. When the lonely heart has learned its lesson, I am yours whenever you call. In the wee small hours of the morning is the time I love you most of all. So this week, Rotarians, I hope that you get a chance to connect to those people and those things that you love in the wee small hours of the morning and at all other times of the day.
Thank you, Carrie, for that very original thought for the day, sung beautifully. And we're going to hear more from Carrie later, another time. All right, please join me, everyone, in reciting the Rotary Vision Statement once it comes up. There we go, good. Together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. All right, Guests are always welcome to visit our club. Do we have any visiting Rotarian today? Would you please raise your hand and stand up? Okay, if not, then will members who have host guests today, please stand, introduce yourself, your occupation, and your guests. And we have a mic runner.
Thank you, President Mary. Today, would you like to stand up, Danny? Today, my guest is a new employee with one of our former members, Sonia Fitz, who's the Development Director at Building Opportunities for Self-Sufficiency. And Danny is a new employee there as the Investor Relations Specialist. Help me welcome Danny.
Julie?
Good afternoon, President Mary, fellow Rotarians, guests. I'm Julie Fox, retired. It's my pleasure to introduce a good friend of mine, Sue Solomon. And this is her second visit, and we're hoping that she may become a Rotarian soon. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, President Mary. I'm Anna Marie Jones, Emergency Management Consultant, and it is my pleasure to introduce 4 guests today. Yeah, wow, 4.
Yes.
4. First, I'd like to introduce Eric Hughes. Eric is very active with the Grand Lake Neighbors, which is one of our neighborhood councils. Over here we have, yes, you can clap, thank you. Eileen Morenz, she is also with the Grand Lake Neighbors. Over here we have Noah Reason Brown with Black Rock Rangers. Yep. And finally, we have my friend Debbie Ward, who is with one of my most favorite nonprofit groups, the Trash Falcons. Debbie.
Thank you, Anna Marie, for bringing 4 guests. I think we have another person in the back.
Well, I see here that we have a visiting Rotarian, John Gressley.
John Gressley, yes. Thank you. Any other guests? Okay, Marie?
Hi, I'm Marie Sescon, and I'm from Fast Signs. And we have a guest, Diane Dobson.
Okay, well, thank you. Do we have any guests?
Mary, I'm very sorry to tell you that we have no guests online today.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe next time. All right, so again, everybody, thank you for joining us today. We always welcome you to come back for joining us at a future meeting or a community service project. Okay, today we'd like to celebrate all Rotarians with May birthday with a cake for dessert, which is you saw in the back. Please raise your hand if you are born in the month of May. Good. Ralph? And I am too. May 29th, Memorial Day. So I think we like to do the tradition of in the we publish birthday months. So in May is all the people that are born. We also now like to celebrate the May, June, and July birthday with a cake as well. So I think I'm having it at the end of the month for my year, and Tom decided to do it differently and do it the first of the month for his fiscal year. So that's fine. You get cake whichever way. Thank you. All right. Today, I have the privilege of inducting our 23rd newest member of the Oakland Rotary Club. Well, Sabelle Gerasi and her sponsor, Keith Urati, join me at the lectern. Keith, will you introduce Sabelle with 2 interesting facts about her?
Thank you, President Mary. President Mary, fellow Rotarians, it is my pleasure to introduce our newest Oakland Rotarian, Sabel Jarakis. Sabel is the Executive Director of the Junior Center of Arts and Sciences here in Oakland. Sabel was born and raised in Washington, D.C. She holds an M.A. at Art Education from Boston University. Sabel has a 12-year-old daughter who attends the Oakland School of the Arts. Sabel is from a family of artists, and this appears to be continuing. In her free time, yes, she spends much of her time as possible working on her art. She also loves gardening and her dog, Waffles. Fellow Rotarians, please join me in welcoming our newest Oakland Rotarian, Sabel Jarakis.
Okay. Yep, I got it. All right, Sabel, welcome to the Oakland Rotary Club. You are joining 270 Rotarians in the club and over 1.4 million Rotarians in the world. Sabel, here is your red badge, which signifies you as a new member. You will also receive in this goodie bag the 4-way test, which guide Rotarians in their daily lives as follows. We have 4 commandments at the Rotary Club. 1, is it the truth? 2, is it fair to all concerned? 3, will build goodwill and better friendship. And 4, will be beneficial to all concerned. You will receive a Rotary Made Easy handbook in this goodie bag, which provide useful information about our club and also a roster with your 270th newest best friends. Here in your Rotary pin, behind it is your Rotary pin, which gives you, wear this pin proudly because wherever you go in the world, people recognize this Rotary pin, and you're always welcome to go visit a club in another state, another country, anywhere in the world is recognized. So, finally, inside our goodie bag is a centennial book written by Rotarian Linda Hamilton covering 100 years of the Rotary history. So your commitment as a new member is to attend meetings, either in person or online, participate in service activities, practice service above self, and contributing financially to the Rotary Foundation and the Oakland Rotary Endowment. Here are your goodie bags, thank you. It is my pleasure and privilege to induct you as the newest member of the Oakland Rotary Club. Let's give Sabel another warm welcome. All right, Justice Smith, can you tell us what's this big poster we see around the club made by, I guess, Marie Sekan?
Absolutely, I can, President Mary. Thank you. And thank you, Marie, for making that poster for us. That's fantastic. By a show of hands, how many people in this room have been to the new Parkway Theater? Raise your hand if you have. That is a great amount. I'm excited. So you guys are out there, you're watching Warrior games, you're watching movies over there. You know what a great venue it is and what great food they have. Well, Rotary is coming to the new Parkway Theater on the evening of Wednesday, June 14th, and we want you and your guests to be there. We are think Rotary TED Talk with a business twist. So we have some incredible speakers lined up. One of them is in this room right now, Elliot Jones. We also have Nancy Williams and Sean Marks. And these guys, we lost our poster here, but this is a free event. Please go to the Rotary Calendar website and register for this. We're going to fill up the hall, and we're going to take all of the wisdom and knowledge and experience from these incredible speakers, and we're going to help other leaders in the Oakland community build their organizations. So we'll have speeches from each of those people, and we'll have a Q&A session. Afterwards, we'll have great food and networking as well. We hope to see you there. Please register. Take care.
Great, yes. Please register. I think they're gonna, and bring a friend. The idea is fill up the theater. We want to get a big turnout. All right, at this time, Carrie Hamill, would you give us an update on the gala fundraising event?
Well, I'll start by saying it's over. It's not next week. So I played basketball as a kid and was taught that after you scored a basket, you pointed to the person who passed the ball to you because they also scored the basket with you. It's all in the assist. So speaking of assists, I want to talk about the awesome gala committee that we had working together this year. I want to thank them for raising almost $100,000 for the ORE at our gala this year, and for having 177 Rotarians and their friends at the event. You know, when you're trying to do good, it's good to have some fun in the process. And in all ways, I think the event was a big success. Thank you to Teresa Wayan. She knows more about your preferences for beef, fish, or vegetarian food than should be legal. And blessings to her and Pam Clausen for the excruciating tracking they did throughout for all the money and all the details. Thank you, Christine Watson, for making our live auction exceptional. Thank you, Seth Butner and Kevin Kelly, for delivering $70,000 in sponsorship from the incredible members of this Rotary. Thank you to Isaac Koss-Reed for creating the beautiful branding for the event, to Marie Sescon and Allison Bliss for selling raffle tickets and doing 1,000 other things that were necessary. Thank you, Tom Limone and Mary Jong, for connecting all the loose ends, for solving every problem, and from keeping us inspired from start to finish. And Ken Benson and Jesse Schmidt, Kathleen Sims, Anna Marie Jones, Merlin Edwards, so much help we got. And lastly, speaking of fun, I want to mention the band. Jason Weiselman and Linda Hamilton and their band. That band made it impossible not to dance, and I'm telling you, there were many tail feathers shaking the night of the gala. It's so nice to be part of a group where people never say no when they're asked for help. Thank you for a successful gala.
And I like to have a personal anecdote. So Peter Sheriff saw me in the band room, and he came to me and I asked him, "Did you buy your raffle ticket?" And he says, "Mary, I heard last year you bought 4 raffle tickets and you won a trip to Hawaii. And because you told me to buy a raffle ticket, I'm going to buy 5 raffle tickets." And guess what? He won the raffle, and he chose 1 week in New York. So, buy your raffle ticket next year. It might be a lucky touch. So, all right. Kimberly Miller, would you tell us what DEI fellowship moments do you have for us today?
I sure will. Hi, Rotarians. Good afternoon. Today, your DEI committee offers the fellowship moment, which is designed to deepen our connections and understanding of each other as Rotarians and fellow humans. It is an effort to get beyond the handshake and invite us to learn more about one another. Please pair up with another person at your table, ideally someone you don't know very well, and take turns telling each other or asking each other the following question: what inspires you in your relationship or work with Rotary? What inspires you in your relationship or work with Rotary? And hopefully we can get the online working so we can get some pair-ups in the rooms. Awesome. Go to it, you have 2 minutes.
And also the fact that you also help me with some of the movie projects. Yeah. Oh, yes, yeah. You're able to help me with teaching. Yeah, it's a good day. Off-site meeting. Yeah. Oh, yeah, gave me a meeting spot. I know it. You and Tom. I know. All three of us. Shannon's gonna. Shannon's gonna. Yeah. And it's CJ's. And so good. So we can't record it. This is not in the house. 8 years. It's great. I mean, I'm sorry, but I think scholarships that's really joyful. Kids, yeah, you gotta keep track. We have 2 minutes, so I think we're done. I gave you 6 minutes. I gave you 6 minutes. Let's get 1 minute. Yeah. No, I gave you some. Tell people that. Everybody will learn to judge it. You have to let me know. All right. Time to wrap up your fellowship moments. If you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear my voice, clap twice. All right, I hope you all benefited from that moment of getting just a little deeper with your fellow Rotarians. Thank you for participating, being willing participants. Thanks so much. Alita?
I would like to ring the bell for Kimberly, who's turning fairyland in new, wonderful, and fabulous directions, and for a fantastic talent.
Alita Stola for Kimberly Miller. Okay, so for the benefit of those, a bell ringer represents a generous $100 tax deductible donation to our Oakland Rotary endowment. So, and that's a way also to increase our fundraising, which we turn around and give back out in grants and projects and such. All right, at this time, I'd like to welcome Ruth Struve to introduce our speaker.
Rotarians, President Mary, you all are in for a treat today. As soon as we learned that Elliot Jones was going to lead Macro, we started to invite him to come speak with us. That was 18 months ago. Elliot's background is broad, and he's always been committing to helping vulnerable communities. A good portion of his work is in Florida, a state that needs somebody to love it, Lord knows. But he's also an Oakland native, and we're so happy to welcome back today. He'll tell you about Macro, the alternative program to helping people with experiencing emotional and mental distress, and ultimately trying to keep people out of the criminal justice system by providing actual justice. Elliot, we're so happy to have you here today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. How are you today? Really good to be here. My name is Elliot Jones. I am the program manager for the Mobile Assistance Community Responders of Oakland, more efficiently called the Macro program. What I'm going to be going over today is our one-year report. Macro has been in service for 1 year as of April 9th, 2023. So right now we're at 13 months. So we're going to go over some of the highlights of what we've seen throughout that first year. We're really going to move this to a point where you all can ask questions that I hope to clarify. We do have Macro crews in the street right now, so I may be checking my phone occasionally to make sure nothing's burning down, but truly happy to be here. I was commenting to Ruth and a couple other people I spoke with. Last time I was in this room was April or May 2023 for somebody's prom. So full circle moment for Elliot here this afternoon. But as we begin, your Macro responders have been in the streets serving Oakland for over 13 months, but this 12-month report, I'm happy to say that we made over 12,000 contacts over this 1 year of the pilot period. That's our average of over 1,000 a month. And when I say contacts, I mean every touch. Every time we touched someone in need in Oakland, every time we responded to a call for service or we on-viewed and helped somebody, all of those are what we calculated. And we're very confident that that 12,000 means that we are taking the burden off of our police and fire assets. A little bit of background on Macro, and this slides will be shared with you, so please don't worry about reading everything, and I'm going to try to go through them pretty quickly so we could get on to the other discussion. About Macro, it is really came about through a community drive. Many different groups from all throughout Oakland came together and demanded that something be done about public safety. They demanded an alternative to policing and other traditional emergency response. So it was decided that the city of Oakland would invest in a program that could do just that. In March of 2021, it was decided that this program would live within the Oakland Fire Department. And I still think that that's one of the greatest things that happened, because who has better experience responding to every call, every time someone's in need, with no hesitation, no question, than the amazing members of our Oakland Fire Department. And while there are none here, please just give them a round of applause for all that they do. The fact that Macro is housed within the Medical Services Division of the Oakland Fire Department means that we not only have the benefit of learning from the 150-year tradition of excellence of our Oakland firefighters, but I personally get to lean on the expertise of someone that has worked in the ambulance and first response field for over 30 years, and that is the Medical Services Division Manager, Mrs. Vina Sword-Ratliff. She's an Oakland native herself. She brings this wealth of knowledge to our program, and since she has helped set up EMT programs for interested parties that want to become paramedics and eventually firefighters, she was the best person to help us incubate this idea and begin to pull off this pilot. So it's critical that we are in the fire department. It's critical that we learn and have the benefit of learning from our medical services division. And what's even more critical is that in such a short time, and really 6 months from my hire date to launching, we were able to put Macro crews in the streets to begin to understand how could this really work for Oakland. So if you'll see this chart here, it will show you the number of incidents that we've had month over month from our inception. And what I want you to see is the growth. The growth of this chart every month macro responders have developed more competencies, they've gotten more comfortable in their position, and they were able to do more and more as they learned and grew into these roles on the streets. We originally started the program tethered to two parts of Oakland, deep East Oakland as well as West Oakland, but as the team got in place, they quickly realized they could do more. And I'm proud to report that pretty much since the end of last year, we have been serving the entire city of Oakland. Please clap that up. So this chart's a little funky to see on this screen, but it looks a lot better up there. You will kind of see the sources of our calls. I mentioned this a little bit. One thing that we started, and I'm not going to get you into the sausage making of how anything gets done in the city of Oakland, I'll spare you. When we started, we had to go back and make sure that our dispatch partners were ready for this new assignment, essentially. So instead of turning on the phone lines on day one and saying, hey, Oakland, give me what you got, we took a different approach. So we spent the first 3 or 4 months introducing ourselves to Oakland and developing a strategy called on-view interventions. This is seeing a call, doing something about it before it ever becomes a call into the 911 system. And no one has ever proven to me or told me or volunteered a solution of why we should wait to serve. So your macro responders every day are out there trying to identify people that are in need of support and offer that support immediately. But because it is about response, first response, we wanted to make sure that we prioritize getting a couple other systems up and running. The first one is the 911 system. So even from right now, really since August of 2022, you can call 911 and request a macro response. How it works is you call 911, Highway Patrol figures out where you are, and then they send you usually to the local police department or the county level agency. In Oakland, it's OPD. You ask, they ask you police, fire, medical. This is the situation. If it's a police call, they handle it. If it's fire or medical, it goes to the fire department dispatch, and that is who also handles macro calls. So you can call right now, please don't call right now, but you can call right now and say, hey, 911, I'm at the corner of 17th and Franklin. There's an individual here who looks like he's in distress. He's nonviolent. Here's a little description. Is there a macro unit you could send? And they will send it over to fire and they will dispatch a macro unit. We are non-emergent. I can't stress this enough. We are non-emergent, non-criminal, non-violent first response. So if someone has a weapon, or if, like many of us are conditioned, you have to heighten the situation in hopes of getting a police response, we encourage you, please don't do that. Be very descriptive of what you're seeing, be very clear, because that'll ensure that it does get to a macro team. Now that is through the traditional system, and that's what our former city administrator, Mr. Ed Riskin, really wanted us to prioritize because we all still call 911. You're not going to replace that system in a couple of days, and we wanted to make sure that connection was made. But to give Oaklanders direct access to our team, we have also instituted a direct email dispatch request for service component. And that is the macro@oaklandca.gov. Write it down if you'd like, remember it, put it in your phone, whatever you want to do. Macro@oaklandca.gov. If you send an email titled request for service, here's the address, a brief description, that'll go directly to our macro field supervisors, who then will disseminate it to the closest available unit. This is all things that we've had to do on the fly to try to better create more and more consistent opportunities to respond to the needs of Oaklanders. So it's not traditionally how things work in emergency services, but it's what we've had to do to get the ball rolling. If you go back to the previous slide, there it is. This is our lifetime map of contacts, and you'll see the number is different than our 12,000 number. Just like everything else, you need to rely on humans to input data, and my team will tell you I'm constantly data, do it right. But that's because we have to be able to document all of our efforts and tell our story. But if you take a look at this, you can see that we have been serving the entire city with an extreme focus on East Oakland as well as the downtown West Oakland area. But this is just the beginning. And really, it is critical to note that we're doing this right now with a total of 11 responders. So we're able to serve the city 7 days a week when we have 11 people on staff. So as we staff up, as we grow this summer and solidify the program a little bit more, we hope to be able to do more, cover more of the city, but we're going to require more people. And the 11 I got are working so hard, but just don't want to burn them out. So we really hope to be in a hiring push very soon. Next slide, please. So here's a couple key stats I'd love to share with you all. In our first year, we were able to defer 141 arrests. And this is a stat from the horse's mouth where OPD officers would tell us on scene, if you aren't successful in your intervention, we are going to have to arrest this individual. As clear as that, no pressure. But our teams were able to, in those moments, work through what is going on, relieve the officer, and prevent somebody from being thrown into the traditional cycle of arrest, removal, and then coming back at some point. So we're very proud of that number. We do expect it to grow over time as we develop our relationship as we greater develop our relationship with OPD, but this is a great start and we expect to see more of that. Next slide, please. High utilizers. One thing that you all should think about macro is that it's truly designed to address those that are heavy users or frequent flyers of the emergency services system. Some people call 911 just to talk to someone. I'm not even joking. The wildest call I heard sitting along in a dispatch was a gentleman who called to ask who does he need to talk to sue Tesla. He called 911 for this. So there are so many people that call and utilize the system, whether they walk up and down the street and call on everybody they see, whether they're constantly calling, trying to get the attention of OPD. Well, we have decided to kind of address the heavy utilizers that are the recipients, but also the reporting parties, is that we need to be able to address their needs, and that's where the email came into play. 45% of all the contacts that we make are repeat people. But this is important for us because it allows us to build a rapport, allows us to build trust. Many of these people that we're engaging with on the street, and you'll see in a subsequent slide, that almost 96% of those individuals that we work with are unhoused. So they are truly utilizing the fire department and medical services for their primary health care. If we can disrupt that, if we can disrupt the people that are calling constantly to report challenges that are happening with the unhoused, pulling away police resources, we can truly have an impact on the other services downstream. So we're very proud that we are spending the time and have the opportunity to connect with people over and over and over again, and over and over and over and over again, because that's what it takes. Why would they trust you with their care if they don't know you? So we really do try to take our time, get to know folks, assess what's going on with them, and then present to them a care plan that they can feel good about. Nothing macro do is forced. Nothing that we do is forced at all. If you don't want a bottle of water, I'm not going to give you a bottle of water. If you don't want a blanket, I'm not going to give you a blanket. But that one day that you accept some water from me, that one day you accept some blanket, we have now cracked open the door a little bit, and hopefully down the line, we can encourage you to accept some of the services that are available to you in the city of Oakland and Alameda County. This is an important measure, folks, lives saved. As you all know, we are in the midst of an epidemic of the fentanyl crisis. When we started macro, there was a report in the San Francisco Chronicle that over 400 people died on the streets of Oakland for over a 2-year period from exposure, overdose, you name it. What we have tried to do is do something about that number. In the 13 lives that our responders have been able to save, it's really just being Johnny on the spot. That on-view mentality, looking for opportunities of who we can serve, and then being there at the right moment to administer Narcan and reverse an overdose. I spoke to 2 firefighters yesterday that said, man, we've had 2 calls recently, and by the time we get there, the macro team has already administered Narcan, the person's awake, and we can get to the rest of the work. But that's a testament that these are truly first responders. They're not caseworkers. They're out there doing what they can in the moment to address the needs of Oaklanders. Another point I'd like to say, there is some confusion about the different teams and services that are available in Alameda County to address crisis or first response. The best way to think about it is that macro in the fire department works everything up to crisis. And there's a lot that can be done up to crisis. But when things get to crisis, where there's the need for a 5150, macro does not write 5150s, and it has to be escalated to our county partners as well as our police resources. And those teams are the Crisis Assessment and Transport Team, the CAT team, as well as the MET team, which is available solely for officers. But the CAT team is also something that the public can request. And we have found that the CAT team has started to staff up. The better and the longer that macro has been around, we're seeing other groups are able to focus more on the crisis level incidents. They don't get pulled down into the low acuity quality of life calls. And we can then have some success in doing what we do and leaving them available for the more urgent needs that usually require police intervention or a 5150. And don't have any more slides, do they? Okay, there we go. One thing that really does highlight the dynamic ability of macro is how we responded to the extreme weather events at the beginning of the year. As you all know, it was storming, it was crazy, and macro really jumped into gear trying to do everything we could to convince people to accept emergency shelter, to give them anything that they need to stave off any desperation, to encourage folks to move away from trees and under limbs. And I don't know if you all heard about that individual that was killed over near the lake where a branch fell on him. We had run into him multiple times over multiple days, and we're doing everything we could to encourage him to move his place. But like I said, it all has to be voluntary. Once you take the person's decision away, you push everything back. It's another trauma layer. They're less likely to open up, and they're less likely to trust you to get support. Not only did we do that in the rainy season, in the cold months, but over the summer, we definitely get into gear with our water distribution. And I'll give you a story. When we first started macro, I was taking a ride along with Station 20 out in East Oakland. It's a truck and engine company on International and 98th. So I get in the ride along, they get me in the truck, I'm all excited, this is gonna be real fun. We go across the street to the McDonald's. A little anticlimactic, but this is what happens in the fire service. You gotta take the truck. We were there for an older individual, unhoused individual who was dehydrated and asking for help in the drive-through line. And as we got there, it was very clear that he was headed towards expiration. The firefighters are talking to me and they're saying, this guy's super dehydrated. What's going to happen is they're going to get him in an ambulance. They're going to hook him up to an IV. By the time he gets to Highland Hospital, he will be no longer on the verge of expiration. He will get out the ambulance and probably go on his way. But this took a truck company out of service for however long. This took an ambulance out of service for however long. And it was truly because somebody didn't get to this individual earlier in the day and offer him water, check in with him, and see if there was anything that he needed. So this was a very clear, and during this all of these forces, these groups coming together, a macro unit showed up, asking if they could help. And so it really triggered for me that there's an opportunity for us to truly disrupt what is pulling our fire and police resources away from their mission if we are just consistently doing our job. So we have prided ourselves on offering a 7-day-a-week program every day from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. And when we can, like tonight, we will go as late as 10 p.m. So from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. It's called a swing shift. Of the individuals that we do encounter, 60% of them do not have health insurance. That's something that we're hopefully able to address down the road. If people are on Medi-Cal, it's a sustainability opportunity for us to build back to Medi-Cal to help with the long-term sustainability of the program. As budgets, deficits, and surpluses come and go, we need to constantly be thinking about sustainability in this pilot phase because that'll ensure that macro will one day be around for 150 years like our Oakland Fire Department. So here are the incident types. One thing, like I said, we're always trying to get ahead of it. So the majority of what we do is well-being checks. Hey, there's an individual here living in his car. There's a guy in a tent at the end of the block. Can you check on him? Or there's somebody in front of my house asleep in front of the door. Can you guys come and see if they're dead? Usually they're not dead, they're asleep. So we are able to come, we're able to assess, offer you some water and a blanket, see if there's any resources you're interested, housing or otherwise, and begin to make those connections. The more that we are in service, we're seeing that we get called into a lot of behavioral concerns. And I really try to stay away from the word crisis. I think a lot of people broad brush crisis. Oh, they're having a mental health crisis. Oh, they're having a mental health breakdown. There needs to be some discussion had about desperation. Many of the people that we see having an episode on the street are desperate. They haven't had water. They haven't had food. they're cold, they haven't had a social connection in a while. And if we can do our job and get to these people before they are truly desperate and on the verge of exploding, you know, we can truly, truly begin to build trust and get them the help they need without having to engage other resources that could just result in them being 5150'd in John George for 72 hours and then coming back to the community upset. So for the 1 year in service, macro responders have had a total of 2,079 hours in service. It's remarkable. I can't even really do the math. But every incident average is about 18 minutes. It takes us about 10 minutes to get there. So we're looking at about a 30-minute average to be able to respond to calls. Sometimes that's quicker. Sometimes it takes considerably longer. The beauty about macro is that we do not have a time limit like our fire or police assets, where it's encouraged that you move along to be ready for the next call. We can spend as much time as we need to with an individual to get them the help that they need to make the appropriate connections and if need be, coordinate further care. Next slide. Is that the last slide? That can't be the last slide. All right, like I said, the vast majority of those that we do work with are unhoused, so over 96%. But that's the challenge with Oakland right now. The unhoused, the homelessness issue is something that's impacting all of us. And if we've neglected that in favor of simply just responding to calls that come in, you know, it would be a dereliction of our duty. They're the ones that are often called on. They often call on emergency services for their own care, but they're also often the ones that get called on about, reported to. There's an individual here, he looks sick. I sat with a Station 8 on Telegraph one day, and I counted as 7 people came up to speak to the firefighters about an individual asleep across the street. Oaklanders care, but it shouldn't require that our fire assets leave the station every time someone with good intention calls concerned. There needs to be a different team, and macro is certainly filling that void. And it does take time. I really give our police and our fire assets a huge amount of credit because they have all these relationships as well that they've been built over decades, years. We're really trying to play catch up, and we've been effective. Is that the last one? All right, next one. So this is actually the slide I'm most proud about. Yes, it's about being able to respond. It's about being there to serve the community. But most importantly, it's about connection to greater services. And in our first year of operation, macro made over 1,700 connections to service providers in the city and county. This varies from sending and recommending and driving people over to Roots Community Health Center for Welcome Wednesdays, where they can do an intake, they can get some food, they can get assessed and potentially join the medical practice over there. But it's also connecting seniors to the St. Mary's Center in West Oakland that specializes in senior housing. This is not a one-size-fits-all. I can't just go through a checklist. We have to assess what you need and then find a care plan that makes sense to you. And if you had a bad experience somewhere, more often than not, we hear about that from St. Vincent de Paul. Somebody had a bad experience in the early 2000s and will never go back. We're often trying to break through that trauma, make the connections, figure out what went wrong, and then provide alternate options. Again, there is nobody in this room, I think, would argue that the service network is truly sufficient for the need, but it's there. And if we want it to grow and be stronger, we have to feed into it. We have to do our best to make sure the inputs are there so these other groups and organizations can enhance their capacity, they can get greater funding and greater opportunity. From when we started, we heavily relied on the CARES Navigation Center out in the Fruitvale. It was a program run by the DA's office, and they were a one-stop shop. We could bring people there, they could get help with their legal issues, and also get referred to housing. It was great, but they're not the only ones. And what we saw after really feeding people into that system for a few months is, oh, now there's an announcement about more beds available in Oakland. Oh, there's another announcement that they're staffing up. So it was very clear you may not be able to draw a straight line to macro's activities, but we are truly out there doing what we can and feeding these other entities, and they're able to enhance their capacity and offer more services to Oaklanders as a whole. Next slide. 1 minute, yeah, next slide. So this is something I think is very key when we talk about desperation. It's the direct response support that our macro responders offered. It's usually our foot in the door. So we gave over 4,000 bottles of water and over 2,500 blankets in this first year, but this is about keeping people from desperation. This is about keeping people from expiration. And the cost of this is beautiful. It's a lot cheaper than having our police assets or our fire assets or, God forbid, the morgue. It's a better way to go about offering support with no questions asked, and it allows us to build trust over time and hopefully make that final connection to services when they're ready. Yeah, let's see if there's one more slide. And I think this is the last slide that we have other than an appendix. The vast majority of the people that we do serve are African Americans. I would even go further that the vast majority of the people that we serve are from this community, the Greater Bay Area or Oakland. I can't get into that HIPAA stuff, but it is clear that we are doing everything that we can at this stage to serve Oakland. And while there are a lot of lofty aspirations for what macro was supposed to be, this is what macro is now. And we hope that we are able to finish through the pilot, and then we can continue to grow and evolve and be here to serve Oakland for years to come. And I'll take any of your questions. Thank you.
Anybody with questions, please come to the microphone in the back.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, what's up?
Just have very quick questions. What is a sleeper call? I saw that was a statistic.
Yeah, so a sleeper call is a wellness check on an individual that appears to be sleeping. So a lot of times you'll hear people walk in the bar, they'll say, oh my God, there's this guy here, he looks dead. And you say, hey, did you wake him up? Did you check? No, I'm going. You should check on him though. Oh, okay. So it's just making sure that they're okay, and 99% of the time they're just sleeping.
Yeah, the other question I had is that you said 45% of your 12,000 annual calls are
Thursday, 12:38 p.m. And final message. One new message.
Okay.
And final message.
All right. So 45% of the calls are repeat people. Reuse the system over and over. I'm wondering how many people is that? Because that's 5,500 calls are being repeated by the same group of people.
So I would say that I would call them contacts, because call assumes that they were call. So yes, of these contacts, I don't have an exact number of how many we see repeatedly, but 45% of everybody we've had prior contact to. And that's a testament to being out there every day, getting to know the people in need, making that connection, and then eventually building up their trust to connect them to services. Like I talk to our police and our fire assets regularly, they often run into a situation where the individual they're there to serve, they have seen 10, 15, 20 times over a week, a month, what have you. So if we can take that burden off of them, they stay in the station or they stay on the beat, and our team can start the building trust process that'll hopefully lead to them accepting the care opportunities. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Elliot. I'm curious, what are your long-term goals for macro?
Why the heavy hitting questions, brother? My long-term goals are, one, we have to meet our full staff capabilities. Once we have that, we can then figure out truly what a team and a shift can do. Right now, the work that we're doing is truly on the back of these amazing 11 responders that are showing up as often as they can. So I want to see it fully realized while we're in the pilot phase. I think there's a lot of call for it to be 24/7. I'm not sure that's necessary, because so much of what we do is the connection to services. So if there's no service connection to be made, why are we technically in service? But the beautiful thing about the program is that it should evolve. I can't say that I'll be here in 50 years running it, but hopefully we can lay a foundation that it can grow and that it's supported not only by our fire services, but our other emergency services. And while we've come out the gate pretty fast, and I would say faster than most city programs, it is something that we don't want to get lost in the sauce or start, tooting our own horn too early. We're still in the pilot phase. We want to see this through. And my goal in 10 years is that nobody knows who Elliot is, but people are real accustomed to macro.
Thank you. Sounds like you're doing great stuff.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Elliot. It was my understanding, like I'm sure a lot of citizens, that someone would call 911 and request macro service on that call. Upon doing some more research, it's my understanding that calls are actively routed to macro as well. You talked a little bit about that. What are the criteria used to route those calls to macro?
So, thank you. This is a great question. One, it's an ongoing discussion. We will have a macro direct phone line eventually, but that involves our dispatch partners being trained. It takes 6 months to train a fire dispatcher because they just can't do macro. They have to be available for all of fire. So we have one that's about to come through the training and 4 more that are starting their dispatch training. So we hope to have enough dispatchers to handle this extra volume. But the way it works right now is when you call 911, you get to OPD, they do an initial triage. You know, what's the scenario? And you can call and be like, I want macro. They're not going to do it until they do their internal check. You know, who, what, where, and weapons. Who is it? What's going on? And are there weapons involved? So if you call and say, hey, there's a guy out here on Grand Avenue, you know, naked in the middle of the street with 2 AK-47s balancing a machete on his nose, it's never getting to macro. Now, you may have said that because you wanted a response quickly. And the reality is it could just be a guy on the corner who's talking to himself or who's yelling. He doesn't seem to be violent. He doesn't have any noticeable weapons. I would hope he could get some help. That has a much more likely scenario of getting to macro. But because nothing is black and white, and really right now in emergency service, it's all very black and white. Who, what, where, and weapons, police, fire, medical, quick to direct. We're asking for another level of triage to happen because we're unarmed. We don't have protective gear. We really come in there on trust that we're getting the correct information. So once they do their triage process, it gets to fire, a little bit more explanation is needed, and then they send it to our crews. But the email is also a great way just to reach us directly because you'll hear back from one of our field supervisors, or we'll send a team directly in response to it, and then we'll send an email back with kind of what happened. Depending on the time, and we arrived, nobody was there, or we were able to make contact, we discussed with the individual, we'll make sure that it's a regular check-in because we don't have authority to move you. We don't want that authority. We don't want to be that type of enforcement. We want you to be ready for care. So that's also a tough thing explaining to the reporting public, like when macro shows up, if you thought, and I get this in my emails all the time, well, why didn't you remove them? Why didn't you move them? That's not our role. Our role is to work with them enough that they hopefully either decide to move or they accept us to make a connection to a group that could help them. And really also we rely heavily on our other city partners, the homeless encampment management team, homelessness, and social services as well, human services.
Last question. Make it short.
Thank you very much for your comments. And I appreciate your comments about interrupting the frequent flyers in terms of the utilization of emergency response and fire services and ambulances. One of the questions I have is with regards to interrupting the catch and release model that we have now. An individual gets picked up by an ambulance and they go to an emergency room, or alternatively, the individual goes to an emergency room for care, and often they're released at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning where they're disoriented. I had a cousin who was homeless who was in that situation, was released at 3 in the morning, disoriented, hit and killed, crossing the freeway trying to get to BART. So it seemed like a hub for your services that would be appropriate might be in some of the emergency rooms to provide services and redirect.
So again, great question. I think that's one of those things that would have to evolve over time. Traditional ambulance companies, we don't even take people to emergency room. You know, we do coordinate with the ambulance to actually do that. We have waited around for folks that have left the Bridge Clinic and other things that are at Highland for addiction support and made other connections to services. But it's something that's evolving every day. I think there is some value in us not getting into the emergency or the John George loop. There's so much that we can do with the other services. But it is a problem that we see. We regularly catch people that will have a bullet hole in their leg, walked out of Highland, and we find them on the street still bleeding. So, you know, that's where our EMTs really step into play and try to offer some immediate medical care if they don't want to go back to the hospital, because people can refuse. But the service is evolving, and we can maybe squeeze in one more question quickly. Yes, and the email address for everybody is macro, MACRO, at oaklandca.gov. And if you should ever need to reach me, ejones, the number 3, at oaklandca.gov. Final question.
Keep it short.
I'll keep it short. I'm long-winded, y'all.
So if a macro team does outreach to an unhoused resident who has needs wound care, the EMT does a dressing change and so forth. The EMT decides it looks infected, patient probably needs to go to get some antibiotics. Now macro cannot transport, so would they call an ambulance or what would happen?
So if the severity of the need required an ambulance and the individual was okay with getting an ambulance, we would coordinate an ambulance to pick them up.
If it's something that's not really emergent but needs antibiotics, does that still happen?
So we would definitely address it in the field. We would probably try to make a connection to West Oakland Health or some of the other community health providers.
How would that unhoused person get there though?
Well, we would make the connection, and if we are able to make a connection, we would transport them there.
So you can transport?
Yes, but we wouldn't wait for them afterward. We would just, if we can call and make the connection and ensure it's gonna happen, we'll take them there.
And then how do they?
I'll be in the back if you want to talk more about it.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right. And okay, I'm glad that Keith and Sabelle, would you go to the back and greet people as you leave? All right, Elliot, thank you for your awesome presentation. Just to let you know, education is my area of focus for this year. So the Rotary Club of Oakland is proud to partner with Oakland Promise to offer 8 $10,000 scholarship annually, along with Rotarian mentorships. We are proud to support many as the first in the family to attend college. In recognition of your presentation today, Oakland Rotary Club will make a donation in your name to the Oakland Promise program to support its kindergarten to college program for every child in this city. Thank you again.
Thank you.
CJ Hersler on Zoom. Would you like to tell us about next week's speaker?
Thank you, President Mary. Yes, so you all know that one of the cardinal rules of Oakland is that you can't enter Children's Fairyland without a child. But next Thursday after park hours, you can explore and enjoy Walt Disney's inspiration for Disneyland as you join fellow Rotarians for a special enchanted evening. Come hear from the park's master puppeteer and resident historian Randall Metz all about one of our city's crown jewels. It's going to be wonderful. Come on down.
Thank you, CJ. All right. So at this point, I'd like to thank you, Carrie Bukovich, for the pledge and the thought for the day. Wonderful singing. Keith Urati for introducing Cybele Gerasi. Jesse Smith for informing us about the upcoming business development event called Mastermind. Carrie Hamill for the Gala update. We made almost $100,000. Great. And Kimberly Miller for the DI fellowship moment. We can't even get you to come back to the meeting. Ruth Stroh for introducing our speaker. And Elliot for this awesome presentation again. And CJ for the information about the Fairyland next week. And always the production team for managing this meeting. So as you know now, next week, we'll have an off-site meeting at Children's Fairyland from 7:30 to 7 p.m. So please don't come to the ballroom. There is a link on the calendar for you to register for the event so that Jesse know how much food to order for you guys next week. Next week, I'm Tom Limong and I will be at the Rotary International Convention in Melbourne, Australia. I'm leaving tonight. And so acting president President nominee Shannon Hackley will be conducting the meeting. So be nice to her. Okay, so Rotarians and guests, please remove your garbage and property so that the Rotarians can clean up after the meeting's over. So, share, which means thank you for your attention. This meeting is adjourned. Okay.
Thank you so much. That's like
That's the coolest honor I've ever gotten. That's really awesome.